We, uh, is the
Oh,
recording
sorry, we are
started?
recording. I didn't see it come up, Jennifer. Sorry. Um, Thanks, everybody, for joining us today for the March 24th webinar for the Ag Data Co-op. Today, Ziwen Yu, Assistant Professor at University of Florida, will talk to us about challenges, solutions, and the path forward in ensuring fair and ethical data governance between farmers and agricultural technology. Ziwen, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, for inviting me for this webinar. So my name is Ziwen Yu. I'm an assistant professor from UF in Agriculture and Biological Engineering Department. My expertise is in big data analytics and ag and natural resource systems. So today I'm going to talk about this topic regarding the data management, data governance in agriculture between farmers and agricultural technology providers. The coverage for my presentation is regarding three parts. One is the background for data governance in agriculture, its status and problems. And then the second part is perspectives and practices in the industry regarding stakeholders' perspectives and all and the practices that has been seen in industry. And then the third part is efforts and vision. So basically what's the current research effort that we have made and what's our vision for future problems and how we are going to tackle that. So for backgrounds, as we know, data has been a new resource in agriculture. Current revolution in agriculture has been powered by data-driven technologies such as AI. But all these development is changing the whole, is driven by algorithm, and then now it's shifting from the data-centric development. So the key question that we need to answer is how to or who is going to collect these data and provide for future development. Another question is everyone aware about this change? So as we see in agriculture, traditionally agriculture is very simple, farming and then all these equipment such as irrigation supporting the operation in a farm. And then there's one company come out says, oh, I can collect the data from the farm and then to control irrigation system to make it more smarter. Then when the technology upgrades, ATP, it's the short name for agriculture technology provider. So, and then when technology moves up, we have another ATP comes in and says, oh, it can use cloud to manage all these data and then connect to another ATP for controlling irrigation system. And then the fourth ATP is coming up, says we can use AI or other new technology to make it even more smarter. So the same pattern can also be duplicated in other operations in the farm, such as fertilization with different ATPs. So data is actually the key chain in here that connects every entity. It expands the size of industry and also collects all these data that generate into decisions. So everything has been weaving up as a very compressed network that powered by data. So ATPs are emerging as technology are engaged into the industry, and then there's new roles for both farmers and ATPs in this chain. So farmers are not only the technology receiver who is just buying equipment or buying services, they're also providing data. They're the originator of the data in the industry. So ATPs, they are not only the one who is developing this technology independently, they're relying on the information from the farmers so that they can make right decision and use the data to train their technology. And data not only improve the technology, it also expanding the dimensions of industry by data-derived commodity. So such as the natural resource use in agriculture, so water, energy, and also the carbon that has been sequestered in the farm. So these information are all derived from data. So you cannot really measure very accurately how much water has been used in the farm or how much carbon has been stored in the farm. You have to rely on the data for other information to inform this quantity. So and then rely on other technologies such as AI or models for the quantification. So at the end, this information has been changed into commodities in the market, such as ecosystem services. Energy that has been saved in one place can be trained into another one. And carbon that has been sequestered in the farm can be traded, can sell to companies who are who generate powers. So such an example of markets such as carbon market, renewable energy certificate market, and also the water quality credit market. Um, and then, so the key question in here is who owns the data? Nowadays, there are a lot of non-binding industrial agreements that we can find. In EU, there's a code of conduct that passed in 2018 that is confirmed farmers' rights of farm data and its ownership, share, and use. In United States, companies has generated a ag data transparency principles in 2014, and then it also recognized farmers' ownership of data. However, both of these are non-binding, and then they don't have any legal enforcement. But for the legal side, in the US and mostly in the world, copyright law can be partially applied for data ownership. So there are different type of copyrights, and actually only two options can be applied to data. One is trade secret, another one is contract. So basically, contracts are overriding all the conditions that is defaulted in copyright law. So there's one case that I select in here, trying to illustrate how companies are managing the trade secret in their contract. For trade secret, there are two important conditions. One is when you keep the secret, you have to reflect its economic value. And two is you need to ensure the disclosure for this information so that it remains as a secret. Then when data transfer from farmers to a company called XYZ. So basically, I'm trying to mask the name of the company here, but it's a big giant company for agriculture. And then there's a quote of the contract in here. So it says by uploading, inputting, transmitting, storing, or otherwise making data available to XYZ, you agree that XYZ may use, display, perform, reproduce, modify, and distribute such data. So which means farmers don't have any control of the disclosure of this secret, basically data. And then without any compensation paid to you, that means there's no economic value that can be represented. Even farmers keep this as a secret. So with this clause in the contract, basically it means farmers does not have ownership of this trade secret. So then what's the ethical concern with that result from all these clauses that we can see in industry? One is the market manipulation. So basically, we have seen a lot of cases that companies are using farmers' information to either reduce payment to farmers or to modify the compensation so that it's below competitive levels in other cases. And then another very representative case in here is a right for repair for John Deere smart tractor. So basically, it's been years for debating between farmers and John Deere about their smart tractor. So basically, John Deere have this clause in their contract says farmers are not allowed to repair. Oh, I should say they did not provide enough information for farmers to repair their tractors themselves, and then force farmers to use the authorized dealers to do the repair, so that it's going to be in a high cost, and then the farmers might have a delay in their planting season. So farmers has been putting a lot of lawsuit for John Deere regarding this, and it's been I think it took years so that this right for repair issue has been caught the public attention. And then in 2023, there is new momentum that has been signed by American Farm Bureau Federation and John Deere just regarding right for repair. So it says John Deere has to provide a resource and information that farmers can use to repair their tractors. However, I would like to use this case just trying to emphasize that the rights that is related to the ownership was not well clarified in these contracts. So while farmers own the equipment, but they don't own the rights for repair. But what about the rights for other operations that associated with this equipment or other resources? That has been not seen in any kind of contract that we have been collected. But it's really deserved for a further investigation. All right, perspective and practices. So basically, as all these problems popping up, what's farmers' perspective on this? So in 2014, AFBF has did a survey regarding farmers' perspective about data security and about their data. So farmers are worried about data security, data sharing, use, and also market manipulation. And in 2022, our group did a small-scale survey in Florida and trying to see farmers' understanding of data ownership. But we found was the distribution of education plays a very important role in here. So for those who are having education level lower than or equal to undergraduate, they're mostly not aware of data ownership. But for those who have graduate level education, then they almost half of them are aware of ownership of data. And then, so do ATPs own data? And we are also interested in their perspective. However, from the contracts that we've seen in the previous case, the company like XYZ, these big ones, they have these corresponding contractual terms that protected their rights, and then farmers had little or no negotiation power to change these costs. So basically, they own the data, technically. And then what about for small companies? And so we're not quite sure about that because we don't have data. So that's why we did a survey in 2023. We are focusing on the small companies in the United States who are providing service for environmental and weather monitoring for farmers. So, and then they are in small size, that is less than 30 people. And then we are designing these questions really related to data chain. And then at the end, we complete 14 company interviews. So here are some summary of this. Only 11 of them are, 11 of them said, yes, farmers own data, but one of them says no. So the company who says no is they're only doing business with companies but not directly with farmers. And there are two other companies are involved, but not giving any information on this table was they are only providing hardware instead of service to farmers. So that's why they are not, they didn't answer this question. And for the contractual term development, this is very interesting. So for small companies, we saw three types of agreements. One is verbal, which is very informal. And then when the company grow a little bit larger, then they are engaging these legal assistants to draft the contracts for them. And then when they grow even bigger, they adopt these data transparency principles that we mentioned previously, and then they join that agreement, and then to use that principle for their contracts. What we found was not only the size of the company matters, the structure of their service also complicated the whole system. So there are companies that are so smart that they own all the copyrights, all the IP from software to hardware, and they said that we own all the data. Because we own all the technologies and services. And then some other companies behave like a vendor. So they are not providing services themselves. They are just connecting multiple services and provide a service pack to farmers. So in that case, most of them says, oh, farmers own data, but we are going to share data with our collaborators trying to fulfill the service that farmers requested. So, and based on the information that we gathered from this survey, we found that the relationship between farmers and ATPs can be into three types. One is the simplest one is internal and insourcing one. So basically farmers are doing business with one company, which is very simple, very straightforward. And another case is the data vendor case. So farmers are doing business with multiple companies, and some companies are behaving like a vendor. But farmers are aware of these cases. So this is a kind of multi-linkage in there. And then and a different case is outsourcing. So farmers are doing business with one company as an agent and then doesn't know any information beyond that. So farmers are just saying, oh, we are doing business with this company, but actually this company is sharing their data with other companies trying to fulfill the service. So these are some three types of relationship that we observe in the industry. So for the collaborative structure, I think there are risks for conflicting perspectives. So because farmers are not really pay attention to these terms in their contracts, it's very likely that company one says data is ours, but company two that says, oh, data might be, we consider data as farmers' property. And so these kind of situations might happen that making farmers very complicated to control. And another one is shared data access. So ATPs may share and disclose data to a third party without farmers' consent or knowledge because farmers are not quite familiar with this. And then conflicts rise. So like what I said, company one might have one perspective and company two has another one. So farmers might have very complex situations in there to manage their rights. And for this outsourcing case, it will be like a hierarchical relationship. So one company, ATP, just handles all these interactions with farmers. So this structure can be very representative for a case that there's one big company acquire a small one. And then after that, the big company are behaving like the agency for all the services that provided by the small company. And then the farmers are only communicate with this big company and not aware of the small one. And then lack of transparency. So when the big company are communicating with farmers, then farmers are not quite clear about what's going on with the small one, which is ATP2 in here. That makes all these transparency a very big challenge. And also there's conservative policies. So when the company grow bigger and bigger, such as an acquisition case, then companies are more conservative in sharing the data with others. So they are taking the data as a very important resource for their competition edge. So that makes all these conservative practices might happen. So like what I said, the company size matters, and then company size is also associated with the structure of the business. For startup companies, mostly they are doing business with farmers individually. And then when company grow, and then they try to have a service pack to collaborate with other companies. So that's the second structure for collaborative. And then as the company grow bigger, they might, or more successful, they might join a big company. And then so the big company will behave like a giant in industry, and then to manage all these communications and all these governance of data, mostly favoring their interest. So farmers are really disadvantaged in this situation because of the reason that they are lacking of negotiation power, so they cannot change the terms in the contract. And even though ATPs might have, very aggressive terms in contract, farmers are not able to change that. They either take it or leave it. And then it's unclear third-party sharing. So many of these big companies contract says we might share data to our partner trying to fulfill the service that we provide to you. And farmers are not quite aware of all the third-party data sharing in there. And then we don't have any good auditing mechanism in the industry so far. So farmers are lacking the ability to auditing where their data goes and how their data was used by outsourced companies or maybe other ones who has access to that data in the industry. So here's a challenge for both farmers and companies. One is there's no practical guidance or standards in managed data governance in agriculture. And the second one is the conflicts of interest exist in practices, mostly between farmers and companies. So farmers trying to protect their data and all its security, or they want to know what's going on with the data. And the company is trying to protect the data, trying to protect the IP of their technology. So basically, from that perspective, it's conflicting in the current practices. And then the third one is difficult in understanding the legal contracts. So I think both farmers and the companies that we have been talking to, they lack knowledge from legal side, trying to fully understand the data rights in this partnership. And also, they need interpretation for the specific terms. And unfortunately, many legal professionals doesn't have a well understanding of the data rights in such kind of a new technology adoption season. So so this is the one set of challenges, and then this section is efforts and vision. And we can also start with some challenges for the industry. Um, One is there's two main challenges that I'm going to focus on to talking about efforts and vision. One is stakeholders' perspective. So trying to address the whole problem in data governance, we need to know stakeholders' perspective very clearly. But the stakeholders' perspective is very dynamic. Perspective from farmers are quite different from the perspective from industry, from companies. And then their perspective are changing over time because the technology has been, changing their life. And then the contract terms are very difficult to interpret for both of them, as we discussed before. So some effort that we have been made is we are using generated AI, trying to, one is accurately learn stakeholders' perspective and its provenance. And two is we try to use generate AI to assess and interpret contractual information. So for understanding stakeholders' perspective, we did a survey, like what I said, in 2022, but we encountered this challenge when we did the survey. One is we have limited participation availability in our survey. So we only got about 20% response rate from our survey. And the survey subject, I think, is very complicated for farmers to understanding, especially from these legal knowledge. So we have to do a little bit education process so we can ensure farmers understand all these trick jargons and also the topics. And then we also found that diverse perspectives, even for farmers, they might have different background and then they have different farming practices that making them thinking differently on this. So it's very complicated for us to get a very comprehensive vision or comprehensive understanding of what farmers are thinking about. So what we did is we try to use LLM and see if, for what we use is ChatGPT. So we try to see if we are crafting ChatGPT and maybe ChatGPT can behave like a farmer and can answer these questions better for us, and so that we can duplicate the demographic distribution in one location and see how the farmer's perspective regarding different topics, especially for data governance in here. So what we did is we used Python and we used ChatGPT and we replicated multiple times for this and trying to replicate the demographic distribution. And then we are using 3 performance metrics to evaluate how alignment these model results to our survey results, which is real world validation. So to do all these simulation, the prompting strategy is very critical. So we have 3 parts of prompting, trying to make ChatGPT fully understand what we're trying to do. So the first part is role definition. So basically, here is an example. We are defining the age, the race and also the farm and the business structure of the farmer. And then the context framing. So we're telling the ChatGPT that they are participating in a survey about data rights and about technology adoption. And then we are providing, they need to provide their response based on personal experience. Then the third part is scenario description. So basically, this is the question that we would like to ask them. Yeah, these three parts are for every question that we ask, we are defining these elements in there. And then for the survey question, we are using three types of complexity. The single question is yes or no, very, very simple. And then the second one is we are using multiple choices in here. So basically, everything is ranking. So we are asking farmers to rank which option is most important to protect the data. And then the third one is a more scenario conditioned answer. So it's more information. And then, so we're trying to see how the complexity of a question is going to impact ChatGPT's answer. So the method that we're using here, like what I said, is duplicating everything and to mirror the demographic distribution, and we repeat it multiple times, trying to see everything is going to be consistent. So here's the result. As we are replicating the question, so we can see that for the simple question, which are binary questions, we can have a convergence rate about 5 to 10 trials. However, we can see that the real survey result is naturally diverse. And actually, for all the question answers in here, the real survey results are all diverse and in very high variability. And ChatGPT's results are convergent over time, even for the scenario-based question. So it looks like it's not quite aligned. However, the problem that we identified was the real survey results that show all the distribution in there. So we think the answer should be diverse. However, ChatGPT is trained by data set. It has to be converged based on the training data. So the problem in here is we should define the demographic distribution in a very specific group. So for example, we need to define that for white male farmers with age over 50 for corn farmers in the Midwest. So how their perspective on this. And we revised our model following that direction. And we do see that the real survey case also has a converged answer for a very specific demographic group of people. So, but I don't have the result over here for this presentation yet. Just trying to give more information about the further development we have done in this. So for the second question, which is the multiple choice, we tried different, this is for the prompting styles. So instead of the consistency evaluation, we also have these prompting style impacting here. You might find these jargons like zero shot, few shot, and chain thoughts. So they're in different ways that you write a prompt. So zero shot is very simple. You just ask ChatGPT, oh, I need an answer for this question. Just ChatGPT just answer that. Few shot is you ask a question to ChatGPT and you give example for the answer that you are looking for. And then the chain of thoughts is if you have a question that you need ChatGPT to think about in a sequential process. So for example, if there's one condition, if the condition is yes, then you need to go to this route to look for the answer. And then the negative prompting is in addition to all these few shots and chain of thoughts conditions that you provide to ChatGPT, you also tell ChatGPT is don't go to another condition to look for answers. So basically, all these are logic for answer a question, and then the final one is hybrid. So we basically combine all these logic together. So you can see that for different questions, different complexity questions in here, the hybrid mode of prompting provide the best answer, best performance, and then it align with the real survey result the most. Um, Also, so as we are investigating the consistency and also the prompting style, we are also interested in if ChatGPT can provide help us to identify the key factors in the demographic features that is related to data governance. And we found that ChatGPT can do a very good job in here because it just identified farm side and education, which are the two factors aligned with our survey results. So for a farm that is sized by more than 500 acres, farmers are more intent to adopt technologies that can improve the automation in their farm. So it's critical. And then for those who have education level greater than graduate level, what we found is most of them are adopting technologies to collect data. However, there's one farmer that we talked to are not collecting data, and then the concern that he provided was he is concerned about data security. And then for those who have education level lower than undergraduate, most of their question that is for not most of their reasons that for not collecting data is they're not quite sure about the performance of data to their operation. So basically, we can see that ChatGPT can really find these two factors that we are looking for. So our conclusion is like we can definitely have a big potential for LLM to improve the effectiveness or cost effectiveness for the survey so that we can learn farmers' perspective or even the company's perspective in a better way that can we can even learn the provenance of their perspectives. And another direction that we did was we tried to use natural language processing and also LLMs, trying to know to interpret the contracts, especially for the data rights or governance terms. So, for example, in here we are using logic that we extracted key information from the sentence. So, in the sentence that example in here, we extracted you own crop water data as the main logic that we can extract it from this sentence and put into a graph, a logical graph in like on the right side. And then as we are extracting these logic graph for all the sentence in the contract, we can connect them and making a graph like this as a whole logical mapping for the data governance conditions for the contract. And then using this to enhance the process to use LLM. So basically, when you imagine that we have this graph for multiple contracts, and then we put in there and searching for the closest logic for a new contract, then ask ChatGPT to answer to do the interpretation. This is the free infrastructure that we that we're using for these practices. So we have collected more than 150 contractor documents in agriculture. Excuse me. And then we turn the logic of them into a database called knowledge graph database. And then we use this database as a pre-processing logic searching. So if users give a prompt to ask ChatGPT or other LLM models for interpretation, it goes to this database for the closest logic mapping, and then using that to fine-tune the prompt and feed to LLM so that LLM can provide more informative and more, I would say, a better interpretation for the contracts. And we also turned this into a web-based model so that anyone can upload a customized section of contract, and then we can provide interpretation for ownership clearance, like I put in here. So the result would be we're going to score the coverage, completeness, and transparency of data rights. And also we're going to provide explanation for a specific aspect. One is ownership declaration, and two is IP of data, IP of current service, and also IP of data derivatives. So we think data derivatives is very important in here because so far we already see that data has been turned into money in the carbon market, and then that is all derived from data. So farmers are really concerned about these possibilities, and they want to take ownership of these profits. And also the rights of use, share, and access of data are also included. And then from all these contracts that we have collected and we reviewed all of them, so this is a map landscape for data governance in the future that we are think of. So basically, we have the start point, which is data collecting, and then we see that we think in the future we're going to have possibility that this data is going to be open or not. So if everything is open, then we need to know if the data derivative is open. And then, so the orange route provides a large route to an open source for the whole industry. However, we also see that there's other cases that once the data is open, but data derivative is not open, then patent on derivatives is going to be regulated otherwise. And then if the data is not open or is owned by some entities, then it could be owned by farmers, it can be owned by ATPs. If it's owned by ATPs, I think that's the current status. Most of current status are in this route, which is green one, that ATP owns the patents or the rights of data that has been transferred in this rights transfer terms has been seen in contracts. In other case, that data is owned by farmers. Then farmers has the flexibility. Flexibility is they might also have the derivative to be open. So they might have say that I own the data, but other people can have access of the data, and then whatever they developed can be open source. And farmers may also have the derivative not open, and then it can also either go to ATP, which is red route, and then there are going to be a patent transfer or right transfer documents. And then this derivative can also co-owned by ATP and farmers. But that's a case that we have not seen in the market, and we think there's a big burden for administration because it's very hard to quantify the share of these profits and ownership. So some potential solution that we envision for this situation is we need a transparent agreement. So basically, all these wording, all these language in the contract has to be very clear and transparent so that farmers, ATPs, and other stakeholders can fully understand. And two is a balanced rights. So we think official or government might play an important role in here by providing official regulations so that a default condition or baseline that balancing the interest of farmers and companies can be provided. And also this might involve by knowing the problems of everyone's perspectives. So, but it also can have some flexibility for ATPs. So if ATP is really concerned about the loss of IP or reverse engineering for their technology, and they want to have more aggressive terms in their contracts, ATPs might also able to do that, like what they do in the contracts right now. And then to have all these transparent agreement and balance rights protected, I think auditing capacity is very important here. This can be as a evidence to the legal enforcement. So basically, governments like USDA can engage into these process by we need to ensure the data traceability for the whole industry so that we can know where the data goes and who accesses the data and who use the data and how these data has been turned into different models or different commodities. So that in the future, even there's conflicts that happens for the contracts or agreement in here, these auditing or traceability capacity might have the evidence that can ensure the balanced rights and transparency. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions that may have. Thank you.
That was great, Ziwen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So are we going to have some question today, or we just leave to future?
We can take questions. Jennifer, did you have you unmuted? So go ahead.
Yeah, I had one or two questions. That was a great presentation, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing on these contracts. It's a challenge for the producer community. Um, I was I like the idea of using the AI tools to try to kind of distill the contracts into uh, more easily comprehensible pieces, sort of what's underneath all the language, what is the contract really saying. um, and I wanted to ask about, like, you had a slide that showed how kind of like doing a real survey was much more diverse than doing a chat GPT. Could you like kind of
Yeah,
explain that a little bit?
sure. Um, I think this one, right?
Yeah, and I was just, I think what you were saying was that your explanation was just mainly the definition of the population.
Right. So for real survey casing here, we are kind of lumping the response from everyone.
Yeah,
So the demographic distribution is diverse, right? But we
yeah.
know that for certain demographic groups, they might have a common perspective regarding these questions.
Hmm.
So that's why for the real survey case, it has to be diverse. However, for ChatGPT, it's trained by certain data, and data is not. I mean, data is converged over time
Hmm.
during training, and then when run the simulation multiple times, it's going to be converged anyway, right? So to
Hmm.
have a fair comparison in here, so what we did in the next step that I don't have the result for that is
Hmm.
we specifically specify a demographic group and
Yeah.
then to compare with the model results. So we can
Hmm.
see that that specific group's answer for these questions are converged, and then we can compare with the ChatGPT. So from this one, our conclusion is ChatGPT can be used for survey, but you need to specify the demographic features in very specifically. And
Hmm.
then to make a combination that representing the demographic distribution as overall. So basically, you need to have converged answers for every group, but then you lump them together to represent the whole distribution.
I gotcha. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, that's great. And then the other question I had was, you're showing like a process flow for, the data, the farmer grants rights to like a technology provider, and then the technology provider might then grant that to like another, yeah, this one. Yeah, go back one. Hold on. They go to
This one or
there
next
was
one?
there was a flow chart. I saw it for a second that was like the farmer grants rights to data to a provider, and then the provider could grant rights to another.
Uh, I'm not quite sure which one you're.
Oh, okay. So anyway, maybe as I talk about it,
Sorry.
it'll come to you. So I was wondering if there are situations where the farmer has the option to, for example, I'm the farmer. I grant rights to company A. They're allowed to use my data, or I give them certain access. But I communicate to them that I'm not willing to allow them to sell it to somebody else or share it with somebody else, right? Because we know that a lot of the first interactions with producers from a provider, um, that provider often turns around and shares the data with somebody else, right? Either internally or externally. They
Yeah.
say, oh, we got the right from the farmer to use this data, and so now we're going to turn around and we'll contract it out to somebody. Or when in our
Mhm.
internal arrangements or arrangements with other companies, we'll just pass that data along. And I'm wondering if
Right.
producers have the option of saying, look, I know you would like to use my data for certain purposes, and I'm fine with that, but I don't want you passing it on to anybody else.
Um, I don't think it's possible. Basically, farmers cannot change the contracts. And
Mm,
then, right, so and for companies, their perspective is we're going to provide a service
mhm,
so that it can make the operation automated or high efficient.
uh-huh,
But to provide this service, we have to do this. We have to share data to others. If you don't allow us to do so, then no, we are not able to provide the service.
uh-huh,
And farmers basically they are not quite into these conditions because for the first place for farmers is we need to get the service.
uh-huh,
Farming operation is the first priority most of the time. And then if there are some cases that farmers want to restrict these access to the third party, um, right now is for those third party providing the service, farmers are not able to change that. But
yeah.
farmers are able to control whoever the other third parties access to their data. So that is
Mhm,
something happen right now.
mm, mm. Interesting. Um, and I guess my third question is where do you see this situation going? Like if I look at
Mhm.
what's been happening with in ag data
Wow.
in the future, I actually see I tend to be hopeful, so I see
Mhm.
an increase in communication and probably um, more of a balanced relationship between um,
Yeah.
farmers and companies and producers. But when I look in other areas, like for example, when I look at you know uh, big tech and companies like Meta, developing these
Mhm.
large language models, it
Mhm.
seems that the the rights of the user are
Mhm.
actually going down. Like there's a lot of situations where you just don't have the option. You can't opt out anymore, right? It used to be your user, you could opt
Mhm.
out on whether you wanted your data used for other purposes with the company, and the
Yeah.
company is saying, yeah, sorry. Like if you use it,
Mhm.
we get your
Yeah.
data, right? So
Mhm.
do you
Mhm.
have the same perspective in agriculture that you think that generally the community is becoming more aware of these issues and there might be um, more
Mhm.
discussion around these contracts, a little more clarification and more of a balanced sharing of the benefits of data.
Um, Yeah, so basically, I think that there's a big trend in there that we cannot avoid is data sharing is going to be the key part for the development in this industry regarding technology development, right? So even though we have different concerns about data governance, everything that has to serve that this trend is going to happen in the future. So I think that's a big assumption. Then the question is how these concerns that, like what I said, Meta or these large language companies are basically cannot ensure users' rights fully in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's the reality that we cannot avoid. But by not providing fair service to users, then what compensation that we need to provide to them? That's a question that we might answer, right? So, and also, this is something that the reason why I have this landscape in here. So, the right bottom part, which is profit sharing terms. So
Mm-hmm.
we know that data sharing is going to happen. And when this sharing is happen, and the contractual complexity is one thing, but the most important thing is if farmers get compensation by this new mechanism, and they are involving as a as a key stakeholder, a player in the whole industry, that will also change a lot of things. So that's a big trend. And for very specific ones on the contract side is like what I said, there has to be a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some unbinding industrial agreements already says farmers own the data.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a baseline, but we don't have any regulations. We don't have any formal documents from the government or from the legal side that protecting this baseline. So if this baseline can be clarified officially, then
Mm-hmm.
that will give pressure to the companies. So companies need to specify all their rights in the contract very specifically. Otherwise, farmers own the data. Farmers own everything regarding this ownership. So that will protect a lot of rights on farmer side. So those are the two directions I think is going to be critical in the future. And again, it's not on farmer side. But farmer need to understand this situation and their perspective should be followed
Mm-hmm.
to make this decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. I really appreciate that. Okay. Well, thank you, Ziwen. We'll have this recording. We'll put a notice out that it's available. We'll post it to our YouTube channel. And just wanted to say thank you. This is fantastic. And I really appreciate your
Thank you,
participation
Jennifer.
in our webinar
Yeah.
series. It's awesome. All
All right.
right. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. I appreciate it. Everybody have a great Monday. And
All right. Thank you.
thanks much.
Yeah.
Have a great spring. All right. Thanks,
Okay.
Luann.
All right. Bye.